My sister told my entire friend group one had cheated on my ex to make herself look like the loyal one during a falling out. I hadn't. I showed the messages that proved what actually happened. She lost every friend she thought she'd won. My sister has been lying about me for years, and I have proof, and I used it, and I don't feel bad. Here's the thing about growing up with someone like her. She doesn't lie loud. She lies soft. She plants seeds and walks away before the flower blooms so no one ever traces it back to her. I watched her do it to other people my whole life, and I genuinely believed I was safe because I was family. That was my first mistake. For context, my ex and I split about 2 years ago. It was mutual and boring, honestly. We just stopped working. No big fight, no third party, nothing dramatic. We stayed on decent terms. He'd occasionally comment on my posts. I'd wish him happy birthday, that kind of thing. Clean. My sister and I have the same friend group because she basically inserted herself into it about 4 years ago. My friends, my birthday parties, my introductions. She came in smiling and funny and slowly became the version of me that was easier to like. I noticed it, but I never said anything because what do you say? Stop being charming to my friends? It sounds insane. The falling out between us started over something stupid. She borrowed money from me twice and I asked for it back. That's it. That's the whole origin. I asked her to pay me back and she looked at me like I had just accused her of murder. She said, "I can't believe you're being like this over money." I said, "It's not about the money. It's about the fact that you said you'd pay me back 3 months ago." She left my apartment without another word. 2 weeks later, I started getting weird energy from my friends. One of them went quiet on our group chat. Another one canceled plans with a vague excuse. I didn't connect it at first. I thought it was just life being busy. Then one friend, the one who has always been direct with me, texted me privately. She said, "Hey, I need to ask you something and I need you to be honest. Did you cheat on your ex?" I actually laughed out loud when I read that, because it was so far from anything that had ever happened. I said, "What? No. Why?" She said, "Your sister told a few of us that she found out after you broke up. She said she kept quiet to protect you but that she felt guilty staying silent now that she'd seen you moving on like nothing happened." I sat with that for a second. The construction of it was so deliberate. She kept quiet to protect you. That line does two things at once. It makes her look loyal and it makes me look like someone who needed covering for. She had built herself a halo using a lie about me. I asked my friend who else had been told. The list was almost everyone. I didn't cry. I think I was too angry to cry. I just went to my phone and I started going through my messages with my ex from the entire time we were together. Every conversation. I screenshotted everything relevant, the good moments, the normal fights, the breakup conversation itself where we both agreed it had run its course and both said we were grateful for the time we had. No accusations, no anger, no third party mentioned anywhere. Then I went further. I screenshotted the conversation I had with my sister 2 weeks before, where I asked for my money back and she got defensive. I screenshotted a conversation from a year earlier where she had actually asked me once if my ex and I were solid because she thought he was really attractive. I had brushed it off at the time. Reading it again, I felt sick. I didn't send a wall of text. I didn't write an emotional speech. I put everything into a folder, shared it to the group chat, and wrote one sentence. Since apparently my relationship history is being discussed, here's the actual record. Then I sent a separate message directly to my ex and asked if he'd be willing to say something publicly. He didn't even hesitate. He posted in the group chat himself, completely unprompted beyond my ask, and said that we ended things together, that I never cheated, and that the split was one of the most civil ones he'd ever been through. The group chat went silent for about 40 minutes. And then it wasn't silent anymore. My sister tried to do damage control. She sent a voice note to the group saying she may have misremembered some details and that she had been in a bad place emotionally and wasn't trying to hurt anyone. She said the situation was being blown out of proportion. My direct friend replied, "Which part did you misremember, specifically?" No response. By the end of that day, the friends she thought she had won over were the ones telling her they needed space. 2 of them reached out to me privately to apologize. One of them cried on the phone and said she felt manipulated. My sister lost every single person she had spent 4 years collecting. She texted me 3 days later. She said I humiliated her publicly and that she was just trying to protect herself during a hard time. I didn't reply. My mom called and told me I should have handled it privately, that I embarrassed the family, that my sister is sensitive. I reminded my mom that I handled it exactly as publicly as my sister did, and then I ended the call. I don't feel guilty. I feel tired. I feel like I spent years being careful not to create conflict with someone who was quietly burning things down behind me the whole time. But I keep thinking about whether I should have called her first before going to the group. I keep wondering if putting it all out there the way I did made me look vindictive even though everything I sent was just the truth. So, was I wrong to go straight to the receipts instead of confronting her directly first? My sister showed up at my workplace on Monday. Not to apologize. Not to talk. She walked into the lobby of my office building, asked the front desk for me by name, and when the receptionist called up to my floor, I could hear her voice through the phone even from 2 feet away. Loud. Practiced. The kind of voice she uses when she wants an audience. I told the receptionist I wasn't available. 10 minutes later, my coworker leaned over and said, "Hey, there's a woman downstairs saying she's your sister and that it's a family emergency." There was no emergency. I knew that, but I went down anyway because I didn't want her making a scene in the lobby of a building where I have to show up every single day. She was standing near the entrance wearing this look I've seen on her face my whole life. this particular combination of wounded and righteous that she pulls out whenever she's been caught doing something. She saw me and immediately said, "I just want to talk." I said, "You came to my job." She said, "You won't answer my calls." I said, "There's a reason for that." She stepped closer and lowered her voice. She said, "You destroyed my friendships over a misunderstanding. Do you understand what you actually did to me?" I looked at her for a second. A real second. Because that word, misunderstanding, was doing a lot of work in that sentence. I said, "You told people I cheated on my ex. You said you had kept quiet about it to protect me. That's not a misunderstanding. That's a story you built." She shook her head. She said, "I never said it like that." I pulled out my phone. Not to show her anything, just to have something to hold so I didn't say something I couldn't take back. I said, 3 people repeated it back to me almost word for word. The same details. That's not a rumor that got twisted. That's something you said the same way every time. She didn't answer that. She switched angles the way she always does when a direct argument isn't landing. She said, "I was upset about the money thing and I said something I shouldn't have." I admitted that, but the way you came at me in that group chat was vicious. You made me look like a liar in front of everyone. I said, "You were a liar in front of everyone." She left without saying anything else. Just turned around and walked out. And I stood in the lobby for a minute feeling this strange flatness, not relief exactly, more like the absence of something I'd been carrying for a long time without naming it. That night, 2 things happened that I wasn't prepared for. The first was a message from one of the friends who had been in her corner during the original fallout. Not one of my closer ones, someone more in the middle of the group, someone who had known both of us for years. She said she had been thinking about it for days and that she remembered a conversation she'd had with my sister about 8 months ago. She said my sister had mentioned, almost casually, that she had always thought my ex was too good for me. She hadn't thought much of it at the time. She was thinking about it now. She said, "I don't know if it means anything, but I thought you should know. It meant something to me." It filled in a gap I hadn't been able to explain, which was why my sister had chosen that specific lie. Not just to reframe the breakup, but to position herself as the more perceptive one, the one who had seen something in my relationship that I hadn't. It was a power move dressed as concern. The second thing was a voicemail from my mom. I hadn't expected her to stay out of it. She never stays out of anything. But the voicemail wasn't the gentle mediation call I'd been bracing for. It was something else. My mom's voice was tight in a way I don't hear very often. She said she had talked to my sister that afternoon, after the work thing, and that my sister had told her a version of events that didn't match what my mom had already heard from 2 other people. She said she was tired. She said, and I had to replay this part because I wasn't sure I'd heard it correctly, "I know what she does. I've always known. I just kept hoping she'd grow out of it." That hit me harder than anything else that week. Because it confirmed something I had spent years second guessing. The thing about growing up with someone like my sister is that her behavior is so consistent and so normalized within the family that you start to wonder if you're the problem. You wonder if you're too sensitive, too rigid, too unable to just let things go. And hearing my mom say those words was like getting confirmation that no, I had been reading the room correctly the entire time. I just hadn't been allowed to say it out loud. I called my mom back. It was a long conversation. She told me that my sister had been doing versions of this since we were teenagers, borrowing credibility from family to build herself up in social situations, saying things that were technically deniable but landed with enough weight to shift how people saw whoever she was talking about. My mom said she had intervened quietly a few times over the years but had never made it a real confrontation because she was afraid of what that would do to the family. I asked her why she was telling me this now. She was quiet for a second. Then she said, "Because you're not in high school anymore and neither is she. And what she did this time wasn't just gossip. She told people you were unfaithful. That follows you." She was right. It does follow you. Even when the truth comes out, even when people apologize and say they should have come to you first, there is a residue. Some people heard it, believed it for 2 weeks, and now they've updated their opinion. But that original impression doesn't fully disappear. My sister knew that. I think she counted on it. By the end of the week, the group chat had essentially restructured itself. My sister wasn't removed. Nobody did that formally, but she stopped being included in plans. Nobody announced it. It just happened organically, the way things do when a group collectively processes something and quietly decides where they stand. Someone would say, "Hey, we're doing dinner Friday," and the invite would go out, and her name just wasn't in it. One of my friends told me she'd sent a few messages in the chat that got 1 or 2 responses and then trailed off into nothing. That sounds harsh when I write it out, but I didn't orchestrate it. I didn't ask anyone to freeze her out. What I did was show people the truth and let them make their own decisions. And this is the decision they made. She texted me on Friday night. No long message this time, just 4 words. "Are you happy now?" I read it and put my phone face down and went back to whatever I was watching. I didn't answer, not because I wanted to punish her, but because there was nothing honest I could say that would also be kind. And I was done performing kindness I didn't feel. My mom called again on Saturday. She said my sister had asked if she could move back into my parents' house temporarily because a few things in her life were unraveling at once and she was struggling. My mom said she hadn't said yes yet and wanted to know how I felt about it. I told my mom that was her decision to make, not mine. But I also told her that if my sister moved back in and things went back to normal like nothing had happened, I would need more distance from the whole family for a while. Not as a threat, just as the truth. My mom said she understood. I don't know what happens next. I don't know if my sister is going to try again to reach me, or if she's going to pivot and start managing the narrative somewhere else. I know her well enough to know she won't stay quiet forever. People like her always find another angle. What I keep sitting with is this. She had every opportunity to just pay me back the money and move on. None of this had to happen. And I wonder sometimes if she actually believed the lies she was telling. If she told it to herself so many times that it felt like memory. Or if she always knew exactly what she was doing. Does it change anything, honestly, which one it is? My sister moved back into my parents' house 11 days ago, and somehow that made everything worse. Not because I didn't expect it. I told my mom it was her call and I meant that. But what I didn't account for was how quickly the house would become a base of operations. My mom called me 4 days after my sister moved in and said, almost apologetically, she's been on the phone a lot. I knew what that meant. My sister works a room the same way every time. She identifies whoever is still neutral, whoever hasn't fully picked a side, and she starts calling them. Not to apologize, to explain. And her explanations always sound reasonable until you compare them to the actual events. One of my friends texted me midweek and said my sister had reached out to her directly. She said the conversation started normally enough, catching up, asking how things were, and then my sister said, I just want you to know I never meant for any of this to hurt her. I made a mistake and I've owned it. I just don't think I deserve to lose every friendship over one bad moment. My friend told her, it wasn't one bad moment. You told people she cheated. That's not a slip. My sister said, I was repeating something I'd heard. I should have kept it to myself. My friend sent me the screenshot of the follow-up text where my sister wrote that out. And I sat with it for a long time because that was a new version of the story. It went from, I misremembered, to, I was repeating something I heard. Those are two completely different admissions and both of them are lies, but the second one is more dangerous because it implies there was a source. It implies someone told her this. Which means if anyone believed it, the question would stop being about what my sister did and start being about who started the rumor in the first place. I called my mom that night. I told her what I'd seen. My mom went quiet in that way she does when she already knows something she hasn't told you yet. I asked her directly if my sister had said anything like that at home. The, I heard it from someone, version. My mom said, she mentioned something like that, yes. I asked, and you didn't say anything to me? My mom said, I didn't want to escalate it. That was the moment the conversation stopped being about my sister and started being about something older. I told my mom that her staying quiet while my sister ran a second campaign wasn't neutrality. It was cover. I didn't say it cruelly. I said it the way you say something true that you've been holding back for a long time and suddenly can't anymore. My mom started crying, and honestly, I felt bad. But I also didn't walk it back. She said, I've spent 30 years managing her. I'm tired. I said, I know. But I need you to understand that managing her quietly has a cost. And right now I'm the one paying it. We didn't resolve anything. We hung up and I sat in my apartment and ate cereal for dinner because I hadn't had the energy to cook in about a week. The next thing that happened I was not prepared for at all. My ex reached out. Not about the group chat stuff, that was done. He had already said his piece publicly and I was grateful for it. This was different. He said he had gotten a call from my sister 2 days earlier. He said she had introduced herself casually, said she was checking in, and then spent about 15 minutes trying to find out if he and I had been in contact since everything happened. He said it felt like she was fishing for information. He said she asked him, almost offhandedly, whether he thought I had always been the kind of person to hold grudges. He told her he didn't think that was any of her business and ended the call. He texted me because he thought I should know. I thanked him. He said, I don't know what she's trying to build but it feels like she's looking for something to use. And he was right. That's exactly what it felt like. She was looking for a crack. Something she could take back to the group and say, even he thinks she's being extreme. She didn't get it, but the fact that she tried told me she wasn't done. She was just recalibrating. I made a decision after that. I stopped waiting for things to come to me. I sent a message to the group chat, not a long one, not emotional, just a clear and factual note. I said that my sister had been contacting people individually with a new version of events and that I wanted everyone to know, if she told them she had heard it from someone, that was not how she had originally told the story. I said the original message I had sent with the screenshots still stood and people could refer back to it. I also told my ex's message to the group. With his permission. The response was immediate. Several people said they had already gotten similar calls or texts from her over the past week and had been individually wondering if they were the only one. They weren't. She had worked through nearly the whole list. The only people she hadn't contacted were the two who had been most openly critical of her. One of my friends said, she's been doing this for 10 days and none of us thought to compare notes. That's kind of impressive in a terrible way. And that was the thing about my sister. She was genuinely good at this. The spacing, the casual tone, the way she never asked directly for anything but always left people with a question in their heads. If I hadn't pushed back early and loudly, it probably would have worked. By the weekend, 2 more people quietly removed themselves from any plans that included her. Still no formal announcement. Still just the slow gravitational shift of a group deciding what it values. My sister sent me a long voice note on Sunday. I listened to the first 30 seconds, heard the word, healing, and turned it off. My mom called Monday morning and said my sister had cried all of Sunday night and hadn't eaten. She said it in a way that I think was meant to make me feel something. And I did feel something. I felt tired. I felt the specific exhaustion of being the person who is expected to absorb the consequences of someone else's choices so that they don't have to feel them. I've been absorbing that my whole life. I'm not doing it anymore. I told my mom, I hope she feels better soon. My mom said, that's it. I said, what else do you want me to say? She didn't have an answer. I went for a walk after that call. It was early and quiet and I just walked for about an hour without thinking about any of it. When I got home I made coffee and sat at my kitchen table and realized that for the first time in weeks I didn't feel dread. I didn't feel the low-level anxiety of waiting for the next thing she was going to do. Maybe it was still coming. Probably it was. But right now, in that moment, I just felt still. That feeling lasted about 40 minutes. My phone buzzed with a message from a number I didn't recognize. The message said, you should know your sister has been talking to your coworkers. I stared at that for a long time. I still don't know who sent it. I don't know if it's true. I haven't gone into work yet to find out. That's where I am right now. Sitting with that message, trying to decide if I chase it down or wait and see. Trying to figure out at what point defending myself becomes the thing that starts to define me, and whether I've already crossed that line. At what point does holding your ground stop being strength and start being its own kind of trap? The coworker thing was real. I found out on Tuesday morning when my manager pulled me into her office before I'd even made it to my desk. She closed the door, which she only does when something is wrong, and she looked at me with this careful expression, the kind people use when they're about to say something uncomfortable and they're not sure how you'll react. She said, someone called the main office line yesterday asking about you. I sat down. I said, what do you mean, asking about me? She said she was a family friend and she was concerned about some things she'd heard. She asked if there had been any complaints filed about you here. She asked about your work history. I felt my face go very still. I said, what did you tell her? She said, nothing. We don't disclose that, but I wanted you to know because it was strange and it felt intentional. I thanked her. I walked back to my desk. I sat down and stared at my screen for probably 5 minutes without doing anything. Because this was a line. Coming to my job lobby was one thing. That was embarrassing and uncomfortable. But calling HR to ask about my work record was something different. That wasn't a sister venting. That was someone trying to find a weapon. I texted my mom. I didn't call because I didn't trust my voice. I just wrote, she called my office and asked about my employment history. I need you to know what's happening in your house. My mom replied 20 minutes later. She said, I'll talk to her. That was it. That was the whole response. I'll talk to her. Like this was a noise complaint. I put my phone in my bag and worked for the rest of the day on autopilot. I went home, made food I didn't taste, and then sat on my couch trying to figure out what I actually wanted to do next. Not what I should do, not what the reasonable mature response was, what I actually wanted. And what I wanted was for it to stop. Not through a dramatic confrontation, not through some final conversation where she apologized and meant it. I just wanted her to stop. She didn't stop. Wednesday, one of my friends called me in the late afternoon. She sounded off from the first word. She said, I need to tell you something and I want you to hear it from me before you hear it somewhere else. She said my sister had called her the night before. Long call, over an hour. My sister had told her that the reason she'd said those things about me cheating wasn't just about being upset over the money. She said that she had been carrying something for years. That when my ex and I were together, she had feelings for him. Real ones. And she said that watching me end that relationship so casually, while she had been sitting on those feelings, had done something to her. She said she wasn't excusing what she did, but she wanted my friend to understand where it came from. My friend said, I think she wanted me to feel sorry for her. I asked how it landed. She said, honestly, it made it worse. Because she's basically saying she blew up your reputation because she had a crush and you didn't suffer enough over the breakup. That was exactly what she was saying. Dressed in the language of vulnerability and unprocessed feelings, but that was the core of it. My ex and I ended things cleanly and she had wanted it to hurt me more than it did, and when it didn't, she manufactured the hurt herself. She told people I had cheated so that my clean exit would become a dirty one. So that the breakup would have a wound in it even if I hadn't felt one. I don't know how long she'd been sitting on that. I don't know if she even fully understood what she was doing when she did it. But knowing it now didn't make me feel sad for her. It made me feel something closer to disgust, because she had turned her own unreturned feelings into my problem and then spent weeks acting like she was the one being treated unfairly. I called my mom that night. Full call, not a text. She answered on the second ring. I told her what my friend had told me. I told her about the feelings my sister had admitted to. My mom went very quiet. I asked if she already knew. She didn't answer right away and that was its own answer. I said, how long have you known? She said, she mentioned it once, a long time ago. I didn't think it was serious. I said, she called my office, Mom. She asked about my employment history. Do you understand that this isn't just family drama anymore? She's trying to affect my actual life. My mom said, I know. I said, then what are you doing about it? She said she had told my sister that morning that she needed to stop reaching out to my friends and stop contacting anyone connected to my work. She said my sister had agreed. She said it in a way that did not inspire confidence. I asked what consequences there were if she didn't stop. Long pause. She said, she's struggling. I can't throw her out right now. And there it was, the thing that had been underneath every soft response and every careful non-answer. My sister was struggling. My sister was sensitive. My sister needed patience. And none of that was wrong exactly. My sister probably was struggling. People don't do what she did from a place of contentment. But struggling had always been the reason nothing was ever actually addressed. It was the permanent hall pass. I told my mom I needed to think about what I wanted to do and that I'd be in touch. I ended the call. I sat with the quiet for a while. The next few days were strange. Nothing happened. No texts from my sister, no calls from friends with updates, no unknown numbers. Just silence. And I knew from experience that her silences aren't restful. They're preparatory. She gets quiet when she's figuring out the next move, not when she's given up. My manager checked in with me on Friday. She said there hadn't been any more calls. She said she was sorry I was dealing with whatever this was. She said it in a way that was kind without being intrusive, and I appreciated it more than I could explain. That same afternoon I ran into a coworker I'm friendly with, someone who has nothing to do with my personal life, who said, "Hey, is everything okay? Someone told me you'd been going through some family stuff." I asked who told him. He said he wasn't sure, he'd heard it in passing, someone had mentioned it. So it had gotten in anyway. Not through HR, not through whatever my sister had been hoping to find, just the ambient spread of secondhand information finding its way into places you can't control. A small thing, objectively. Nobody thought less of me for having family problems. But I felt it, the way you feel something landing in a space that was supposed to be separate and clean. I went home and I wrote down everything, dates, what she said, who she contacted, the call to my office. Not for anything specific yet, just because I needed it documented somewhere outside my own head. Because I've learned that with people like my sister, you don't know what you'll need and when. My friend group has a dinner this weekend. A real one, the kind we'd been casually planning for a month before all of this started. My sister wasn't invited. Nobody made an announcement about that. It just happened the way everything has been happening, quietly and without ceremony. She texted me Thursday night. Just one line. She said, "I know you're all getting together this weekend." I didn't respond. I don't know how she found out. I don't know if someone told her or if she just assumed. But there was something in that message that felt less like sadness and more like surveillance. Like she was making sure I knew she was still paying attention. I'm going to the dinner. I'm going to sit with people I actually trust and eat good food and try to have a normal evening. And I'm going to try not to spend the whole night waiting for my phone to light up with something I'll have to deal with. But I know she's not done. And I think whatever's coming next is going to require me to make a decision I've been avoiding, something harder and more permanent than sending screenshots or not answering calls. I just don't know yet what that decision looks like. The dinner was fine. More than fine, actually. We sat outside at this place we'd been going to for years, and for about 3 hours I didn't think about any of it. Real conversations, real laughter, the kind of night that reminds you what normal feels like. I drove home feeling something close to okay. My sister called while I was parking. I let it ring. She called again at 11:47 p.m. And again at 12:03 a.m. No voicemails, just the calls, one after another, with enough space between them that it felt deliberate. I turned my phone over and went to sleep. In the morning there was a single text. It said, "I need you to meet me somewhere. Just us, please." I showed it to my mom when she called that afternoon. My mom said she didn't know what had prompted it. I didn't believe her, but I also didn't push it. I told her I wasn't meeting my sister alone anywhere and that if she had something to say she could say it in writing. My mom relayed that. My sister didn't respond to it. 3 days passed. On Thursday, my friend called me and asked if I'd seen my sister's social media. I hadn't been checking. I'd muted everything weeks ago. My friend said, "She posted something last night. It's vague, but it's clearly about you." I looked it up. It was a long post, the kind people write at 2 a.m. when they're not thinking about consequences. She didn't name me, but she talked about being betrayed by someone close to her, about how she had made a mistake and tried to own it, and how instead of being given grace she had been publicly humiliated and socially isolated by the very person she'd hurt. She used the word, mob. She said she felt like she'd been handed to a mob. She said she had lost friends, lost stability, and was questioning everything because one person had decided that punishment was more valuable than family. The comments were mostly sympathetic. Vague posts like that always get sympathy because readers fill in the blanks with whatever story makes the poster the most relatable. A few people said, "Sending love." A few said, "You deserve better." Nobody knew the context, but some of my friends saw it. And a couple of them commented, politely but clearly, that there was more to the story. One of them wrote, "I was there for parts of this and I gently pushed back on the framing." My sister deleted those comments within the hour. But screenshots exist. They always exist. I didn't respond publicly. I made a decision in that moment that I was done performing this for an audience. She could have the last word on social media. I didn't care anymore. What I did do was call my mom and tell her that my sister had just posted publicly about a private family situation and that I was formally done engaging. Not out of anger, just done. I told my mom that I wished my sister well, genuinely, but that I was removing myself from every situation that involved her, family events, mutual calls, all of it, until things had been quiet for long enough that I could trust they would stay that way. My mom cried. I let her. I didn't walk it back. She asked how long. I said I didn't know. I said it wasn't a punishment with a set end date, it was just where I was. The weeks after that were quiet in a way I hadn't felt in months. No calls from my sister. No relayed messages through my mom. The friend group settled. People stopped updating me on what my sister was doing or saying because there wasn't much to report. She had gone quiet in the way people do when they've run out of moves and are waiting to see if anything grows back on its own. My manager mentioned once, in passing, that there hadn't been any more strange calls. She said it lightly, like she wasn't sure if I wanted to acknowledge it. I just said thanks and moved on. About 6 weeks after the dinner, my mom told me that my sister had started seeing a therapist. She told me in the careful tone she uses when she's hoping information will land as a softening. I told her I was glad. I meant it. Not because it changed anything between us, but because someone clearly needed to be in that woman's corner helping her understand why she does what she does, and I had learned the hard way that I couldn't be that person. My mom asked if I thought we'd ever get back to normal. I said, I don't know what normal means for us anymore. She got quiet. I think that answer scared her more than anger would have. Anger implies you're still invested enough to feel heat. What I had was more like distance, not cold exactly, just far. I had stopped standing close enough to get burned. The last conversation I had with my sister was not dramatic. That part surprises me when I think about it. I had expected some final confrontation, some conversation where everything got said and something either broke or resolved. That's not how it happened. She called on a Sunday afternoon, 2 months after everything. I answered because I was in a calm enough place and I thought maybe I should hear what she had to say. She sounded different. Not broken, not performing. Just tired. She said, I know you don't want an apology from me right now. But I want you to know that I've been thinking about it a lot. About all of it. I said, okay. She said, I don't expect anything from you. I just wanted you to know. I said, I hear you. And that was it. No big speech from me. No rundown of everything she'd done. No demands or conditions. I'd already said everything I needed to say in the group chat, in the calls with my mom, in the decision to stop engaging. I didn't need the conversation to be bigger than it was. We hung up and I sat there for a while. I didn't feel relieved exactly. I didn't feel closure in the clean way people describe it. I just felt like something had finished. Not healed, not fixed, just finished. My ex and I have stayed in decent touch since he posted in the group chat. Not romantic, nothing like that, just the occasional check-in. He asked once how I was doing with the whole thing. I told him honestly that I was okay but that it had taken more out of me than I expected. He said, for what it's worth, I never doubted you for a second. I thanked him. It mattered more than it should have, probably, just to hear that from someone who knew both of us. The friend group is different now. Not worse, just reconfigured. Some people who were on the edges drifted out. A few who I hadn't been as close to became closer. That's what happens when something like this passes through a group. It reshuffles things. Some connections don't survive the pressure, and some get stronger under it. My sister still lives at my parents' house as far as I know. We don't talk about her on family calls, not because it's forbidden, just because there isn't much to say. My mom checks in on her and reports back to no one. She's doing what she's been doing my whole life, keeping the peace by keeping it contained. I stopped being angry about that too. My mom isn't going to change at this point. She loves both of us and she handles that by softening everything and hoping the edges stop being sharp on their own. It's not the way I do it, but it's hers. What I keep coming back to, when I think about all of it, is how long it took me to stop explaining myself. The screenshots, the group messages, the calls with my mom where I laid out every detail. I needed to be believed and I fought hard for that. But at some point the fighting started to feel like it was keeping me inside the situation instead of helping me leave it. I don't know exactly when I stopped needing everyone to understand. It wasn't one moment. It was gradual. Somewhere between the dinner and the Sunday phone call I just, quietly, let go of it. None of the facts. The facts are still the facts. She lied. She tried to damage my name. She went to my job. She ran a quiet campaign through mutual friends with a revised version of events. None of that stopped being true. But I stopped needing it to be a story I carried with me everywhere. My life is mine again. That's the only way I know how to put it. The thing she was actually trying to take, the reputation, the friendships, the sense that I was someone people could trust, none of that landed the way she wanted it to. What she got instead was the exact thing she'd been building against since she first inserted herself into my world years ago. She got left out, not because I orchestrated it, because people saw what happened and made their own choices. That, more than anything else, is what I think about when the whole thing comes up in my head. She spent years cultivating friendships that were never really hers to keep. And when it mattered, they weren't there. I don't know if she learned anything from that. I hope she did, but that's her work to do, not mine.